Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar. We'll begin in a short while. We'll just wait for a few more people to join in so that they don't miss out on important part of the webinar. Thank you. So we'll begin. Others, like if your friends etc. want to join, you can share the link with them, and they can join in the middle of the webinar as well. So hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar of orientation to the United Kingdom, that is UK residency pathway, wherein we'll discuss and we uh, will understand about doing residency training in the United Kingdom. And for that, we have our esteemed speaker. I welcome Dr. Tanmay Jadhav. He is uh, a student of St. James Medical College in KM Hospital, MBBS a batch of 2015 admission year batch, and he will be doing his residency training in interventional radiology in the UK. So welcome, and before we begin, I just have a few instructions, a few etiquettes to be followed uh, to make this process, to make this webinar more smoother and more disciplined. So a few points to note: that you have to keep your mics muted, that is turned off, whenever you are not speaking, and whenever anyone else, that is the speaker or other attendees, uh, are actively speaking. By that, I mean, don't interrupt others unless absolutely required. However, you're encouraged to turn on, that is unmute your mics during the Q&A slot if you have any questions. And if the speaker wishes that it should be more interactive, then also you feel free to turn on your mics and interact and discuss. Then videos could be kept on or off according to your choice and convenience. Inappropriate words like abuses, harsh or rude words towards anyone in the meeting or outside are strictly prohibited. Any such instance will lead to the removal of the attendee from the meeting. And lastly, as stated earlier, some time in the end is also allotted for audience questions and doubts in the Q&A slot. If you have any questions during the webinar, I request you to note them down so as to ask them whenever the time is given. And the question could be asked by turning on your mics and asking it yourself, which is preferable. Or if you are a bit hesitant, then you can also put it in the chat box. With this background and with this introduction, and without any further ado, let's begin. I hand over to Tanmay for taking us through the journey to know about UK residency. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I'm just adjusting my lights so that there's less light which is falling my face. Right. Hi. I'm Tanmay. I did my MBBS at KM and CGSM. So we're speaking about the UK residency pathway. So let me just start the presentation. I would much like it if you can keep your videos on. I mean, it's a personal choice, obviously. But you can interrupt me at any point throughout the session. This session is mainly directed for people who are approximately in their first half of MBBS, because that's essentially when you have all these questions. If you're going to decide on USMLE, that's probably the time when you do it. And going ahead, I mean, it's. I know it's probably a bit early for us to sort of talk about residency if you're in the first half of MBBS, because I am a personal believer that you should really, enjoy your MBBS and then make those decisions when the time comes. But unfortunately, the situation with the world right now is that forward planning has become paramount these days. If you want to get into a competitive specialty, if you want to get into a good place, if you want to get into a different country or a good program later on. So with that, yes, Paras has started his video. I love that he has a calendar behind him. So I'll start presenting. Okay. Cool. Can you guys see this?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, I'll just start the presentation mode. Right, so that's me, Tanmay Dadav. I'm starting interventional radiology training, which is one of the sort of competitive specialties in the UK. It has only 19 positions in the entire UK per year, but you've got more. If you can always go through the diagnostic radiology pathway and then go into interventional radiology later on. So um, let's begin. So PLAB. I assume that probably if you're in the first of your MBBS, then PLAB might not be the word which is used by the time you reach the exam. It's going to be something called as UKMLA, and I'll discuss about the details in the presentation ahead. So um, most people have the understanding that PLAB is essentially the exam, the equivalent of USMLE for the UK, and it's quite true actually. But there's quite a few differences between the two, and between NEET and all the other pathways which relate to the UK. So this is what I'm going to be speaking on: the structure and scope of the exam, the specialities and competitiveness of these specialities in the UK, because obviously you want to balance out your possibilities of getting in compared to India or the US, and then see where you fit into the whole grand scheme of things. The steps of how the exams and the registration for the UK works, that timeline for the process, which is very important, because if you want to have like a timeline, possibly join in to residency with your peers, which I'm going to do. It's something that needs to be planned. It's not something that can be left for later on. And how you can get the scores. It's just pass or fail. You're judged on the basis of your CV. You're judged on the basis of your interviews, and you're judged on the basis of soft skills, which I believe is really the ideal way of doing things, because well, out of all the other things that we'll discuss ahead, I mean, medicine is more something to do with your personality and your ambition towards doing things, rather than proving to NEET or the exam board that you can read this up and you can remember these facts for the next 3 months and then forget all about them. The cost factor, obviously, I mean, it's not. We know that going abroad is not a cheap option. So understanding what the cost implications are is quite important for some people to make that decision. And then lastly, just a word on how life is in the UK, how I found it, basically. So structure and scope. Residency and fellowships, usually most of the Indians you will meet in the UK, rather the old school way of doing things was that MD or MS in India, and then you come to the UK for the residency or fellowships, which, fair enough, was a great way of doing things before, when the recognition for fellowships and sort of these short-term posts after MD were high in India. But now almost everybody has an MRCP, almost everybody has these fellowships. So the value of that is fast reducing. And if you want to eventually end up living here or moving to a first world nation from here, then it's going to be a bit more difficult for you to do that with just fellowships. You will have to, again, re-enter training and then do things. So a lot of people say, I want to stay in India and give NEET PG only, so they're not really interested about USMLE. So my USMLE colleagues, juniors rather, did a presentation very similar to this one. I've literally just edited their presentation and then I'm presenting to you. But the outline is pretty much the same. They said that the preparation for USMLE exam is not going to do you any harm in the first half of your MBBS, and it's only going to help you learn more, which I completely agree with. The exam is intensive and it's going to sort of really catapult your understanding. I myself read through USMLE books in second year, but never ended up giving it. Your decision for PLAB, although, can be quite late, as late as final year, and you could still start residency with your colleagues. With the star over there indicates that you just need to have a little more of a focused plan when you make that decision later in life. Because for me, I made that decision after my final year results. So for me, it was quite late as well, but I've still managed to sort of pull things together, and I'm sure you can do it too if you follow a pathway. So let's speak about the most important question, right? Everybody here either wants to be my surgeon banega or my cardiologist banega or whatever. So it's like that. So what in India, I mean, obviously your competitiveness is created by your rank, and then the first few rank will always take radiology, and then they take medicine, surgery, all that, dermatology, and stuff like that. So that's how it works in the UK as well. sure, all these specialties which we've discussed are highly competitive, but the scale is completely different. The way the things are assessed here is something called as the HE competition ratio. Now, one small factor I'd like to mention to you is that IMGs are increasing significantly in the UK, and to such an extent, we have so many talented IMGs now, that this year the number of overall the number of training numbers in the UK, more IMGs got in than UK graduates. So essentially that means that there are more people from outside origins who are entering the training in the UK compared to people who studied in the UK. Which is a huge shift of the workforce which is happening. So it feels a lot like home, but with much better facilities, a lot of places. So these are the 2021 competition ratios. This is the year before I applied. My competition ratios would be in the 2022 release, but they haven't been released yet. So these are all the specialties. I haven't put in all of them, but these are the main specialties. So quite commonly, people want to do anesthetics. Anesthetics has great scope for work-life balance, private work in the UK, so that's competitive. If you've got clinical radiology, which is extremely popular after COVID because people love the fact that you can work from home, you can basically report for Australia, you can move anywhere in the country or even outside the country sometimes, and report. And it's really fascinating in general. Core surgical training, obviously. The age-old, I want to be a neurosurgeon or whatever type of surgeon. You've got that. You've got internal medicine training, which is essentially the core, like the general medicine MD that we have before going into higher specialty training. And then you've got ophthalmology, gynecology, which are also popular branches. Now, what I want you to note here is these three columns here. This is the application submitted, which is essentially all the applicants from the UK who have applied for this particular specialty. So, for example, let's take clinical radiologies. Last year, there were 1,677 people who applied for positions, and there were only 358 positions which were available across the country. So effectively, the competition ratio was, there was 4.68 people applying for one post. So there was approximately competition against 5 people for every post. And if you want to put this into perspective, think about the number of people giving the NEET exam. So the NEET exam is given, I think, approximately 1 to 2 lakhs, I'm assuming. So 1 to 2 lakh people for about 10,000 good places, and then you've got non-clinical, obviously, in random places which you probably will not be taking up. So then you've got 10,000 good places. Plus, within that, if you subdivide for specialties, that number reduces significantly. Plus the category fiasco which has been going on, it just complicates things. So I'm assuming that the competition ratio in India is approximately 100 to 1 at least with those numbers. So if you see that gap, obviously, I mean, if you compare NEET with the PLAB, that there is no comparison. This is much more easier. It's just that there are different metrics for this application. There is an exam, but that exam doesn't hold that much value. Your portfolio, your interview skills really matter here. So that is what you're judged on rather than NEET, which is quite archaic, I would say. So caveats to the competition ratios is that they are overinflated sometimes. So quite often people will apply for multiple specialties, whereas they actually really want to apply for only one. So for example, I applied for anesthetics, obs and gynae, and radiology just as backups, because obviously radiology is very competitive. So if I didn't get in, I'd probably do 1 year of those and then move on to radiology later on. But then luckily I got it. So those numbers are inflated because people apply to multiple branches. There is a bottleneck at ST3. Now, essentially, ST3 is the first 3 years of your training, which quite often in medicine and surgery are your core. So like we do MS general surgery, MS MD general medicine, you would do that, and then you would have to reapply to whatever specialty you're applying. So you'd like to go into. So there is a compared to the core training positions. So that is a caveat which you need to remember. Right. So we're down to the. Sorry. Any questions till now? Let's just stop at intervals because I know it can be quite monotonous sometimes. Any questions? Paras, if there's anything in the chat, just let me know. Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Right. So. Yeah. Anything?
No. There's
Cool,
nothing.
cool, cool. Right. So three
Three.
steps. You've got for PLAB or the UKMLA as it might be for you guys. The first step is always IELTS. This is an English language exam. IELTS stands for, to be honest, I forgot, but it's an English language exam. So it's delivered by the British Council in India, and I think they've now it's delivered some other people, but it's basically overseen by the British Council. Um, it really requires very basic English knowledge. Honestly, I mean, you've got four sections. You've got speaking, you've got writing, you've got listening, and you've got reading. So these four sections, you need to have at least a 7 band. So the highest band is a 9, and you need to have a 7 band minimum in all sections and a 7.5 overall. For you to become eligible to apply for writing the PLAB exam. Alternatively, some people who struggle with the IELTS exam tend to give the OET. Now, OET is an exam which is recognized by the US Assembly and the GMC, which is the UK equivalent of MMC. So the caveat is that this is approximately 2 to 3 times more expensive than IELTS, and it's more intensive, it's more specific to the medical profession. And again, I mean, it is the dates are far and few in between. So that's the first step. Now you need to get this done approximately towards the end of your final year before you go in for your. So since these results will be valid for just 2 years, that's why if you've given them around your final year exam, then it will be valid till you've completed your PLAB steps and you've got registration, because you need this at registration as well. Right. So the next one is UKMLA, PLAB 1. Now, in comparison to USMLE, this is a completely different ballgame. This is an MCQ-based exam. It's 180 questions you need to give in 2.5 hours. The syllabus is essentially all subjects of MBBS, and it really it's honestly, even though it says all subjects of MBBS, you've got question banks, and if you've finished 1 or 2 of them, it's honestly not a difficult thing. Prep time should be 3 to 4 months with internship, so it's really not that difficult. So it can only be booked and given after receiving final year results. That is the caveat here. So you need to have your IELTS results ready on the day that you are receiving your final year results, and immediately go online and book it. Now, I know that these days they're releasing the PLAB 1 dates on particular days. So you need to have that foresight and planning and know what dates these are coming out, and then book them as quickly as possible to get the most convenient location for you. Now, difficulty level is, I would say, I wouldn't even just count this as difficulty. I mean, it's easier than USMLE, and it's easier than NEET PG. So it's really not something that you should be worried about, which is why I keep emphasizing the fact that this decision to give PLAB or UKMLA can be made quite later on in your career. So this is, even if you don't take anything away from this talk, I would like you to remember that, for example, you go off tomorrow and say like, yeah, you forget about all this future planning and you just enjoy your life, and you say, oh shit, I missed the USMLE board because I need to start preparing in second year or third year. Oh shit, I don't feel like I'm going to do well in NEET PG because I just can't remember things like that. And then you suddenly find yourself in final year and you're like, shit, what do I do with my life now? I want you to know that this is an option which always exists for you, and I do not foresee this option closing down anytime soon. The only thing I would say is that don't treat this as a side option. That is all I would say, because at the end of the day, if you want to end up in a residency program, look, giving the PLAB and coming here for a job is super easy. But getting into training is where the crux of your planning and your preparation comes in. So that really needs to be planned. Even if you start in final year, you can still do all of those things, but it needs to be planned. It can't be a plan B when you're preparing for NEET PG or preparing for USMLE. Okay, so this exam has a 66% pass rate. It's honestly, I'm sure all of you, whoever gives it, will pass. PLAB 2 is a bit more difficult because, particularly for Indian students, because this exam really is not looking at how well you're able to diagnose the patient in front of you. It's essentially like final year exams. You speak to a patient, you try to get the diagnosis, you try to speak to them, alleviate their issues, discuss management and stuff. But there's no examiner there. You just need to talk to the patient. So that they want to see your communication skills essentially. And this is where most people sort of lag behind, and which is why you need to sort of join an academy and practice with your friends for at least 1 to 2 months for all the clinical scenarios which are usually on the exam. You do need to give this exam in the UK in Manchester, so you need to travel for that. And usually people travel 1 to 2 months earlier, join an academy, practice for 2 months, and then give the exam. So this is where the chunk of your investment for the money will come in later on, which I'll explain later. Pass rate again is 66%. It's averaged over a week. If you're not good at communication skills, that is something that needs more prep time to keep in mind. But otherwise, clinically, it's basic. Once you've passed all your steps, you apply for GMC registration. Once you've got that, you apply for a house officer post, which is a non-training job, or you can directly apply for a training job if you've worked for a year during your bond after your MBBS. So the nitty-gritties of that I'm not going into right now because I was told this is mainly a talk for people in the earlier MBBS days. So these are very minutiae, sort of bureaucratic points of the talk. So it's something that can be explored later on, and I'll give you resources of where you can find more information about this. Right. So this is my only meme of the day. I was going through the presentation which the assembly people gave, and there was a slide which said, "Your first shot is your last shot," and I'm like, dude. So yeah, honestly, like I said, if there's anything you take away from this, I want you to know that this is an option for you at any point, which you can explore before your final year. And if you plan it well, whenever you make that decision, you will be able to get your first shot and multiple other shots and get into training with less repercussions than USMLE scores and applications and stuff. Right. So the timeline, obviously.
So,
yeah.
So do you want to, we have some questions. Do you want to take a pause and answer the questions?
I think that would be best because
okay.
I've been speaking.
So should I read them out for you?
Well, I can open up the chat, I guess.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So switching between specialties is one of the questions. So switching between specialties is possible. Essentially, what happens is that you join a training post, and there's a point where you reapply during your training. So within that same year, when the next year cycle has started, you can apply for that training. And if you get into that training, you just need to let your training program director know that, hey, I've gotten a position in different training posts, so I'm going to move there. So they just they make everything happen, and it's really not a big deal. Essentially, you can keep applying at whatever point. We've got people who are registrars at ST6 position, almost going to become a consultant orthopedic surgeon, stuff like that, and they've applied for radiology and they've moved there because they just didn't feel like they could continue doing that, and vice versa, they moved to GP and stuff like that. So you can very easily do that. You just need to keep applying whenever these applications come up, even if you're in a different training position. The second question is, after doing our residency in the UK, can we do fellowship super specialty in the US provided we clear all the steps? Yes, this is definitely something that a lot of people do, and you can do. You can do residency in the UK, and if you've cleared all the steps, you can do fellowships in the US as well. And there is also, if you've done residency, particularly in radiology and psychiatry, I think there's an alternative competence pathway where you can actually, if you've cleared all the steps, you can go there and you can directly apply to become a consultant attending there after doing 1 year of sort of attached work, where you don't have to go through the training program again in the US. So this is something that one of our seniors from KEM is doing. He did his radiology and then went to the US. Is that okay? Any other questions? Okay, so sorry, we've got one more question. Do we need internship completion certificate or just finally MBBS result for PLAB 1? Yes, so I'm coming to the timeline. So basically you just need your final year result date to make a GMC account, and then you can book a PLAB 1 date. You don't need all the other stuff. I'll go through that. The other question is, so do we need to restart from first year of training in new specialty, or is it 1 year we spend another specialty considered? Right. So there is something called as transferable capabilities. So transferable capabilities are, for example, you've done, I don't know, internal medicine for a year, and you want to switch to emergency medicine. So essentially that 1 year is counted because the medicine is essentially the same. So you move on to the ST2 post in emergency medicine. But this is very rare these days. Usually, for example, you want to move from surgery to radiology, or from radiology to surgery, whatever. So there's really no transferable skills that you might have learned in radiology that you can take to surgery. So, or vice versa. So you will have to restart from first year again if you choose to change specialties in that case. Yeah. Right. What is like the total amount of money you spent? Yeah. So we're gonna go through the amount of money that is spent. Don't worry about that. If there's Is that okay? Any more questions at this stage from whatever I've spoken?
I guess they are done, at least
Cool.
from the chats, and we can move on.
Bottleneck. I'll speak. Sorry. So I said something about bottleneck, and I think somebody was confused. Bottleneck is essentially when you've got, for example, 1,000 people training for MD, but then for super specialty, all the super specialties combined, there are only 500 places. So essentially, you're left with 500 people who just cannot get into specialty training because there just isn't enough super specialty training available. So then that is where the bottleneck is created, and that occurs particularly in anesthesia, in medicine, and in surgery. So that's what I meant by bottleneck. So that is something that needs to be kept in mind, particularly when you're going for these specialties. Cool. Let me just start presenting again. Cool. So timeline. This is important because you need to understand when you need to plan everything and how things will progress. So usually this is my timeline, and it's from what I understand, it's probably the fastest timeline for you to get into training. There's really no faster way of doing things from what I can see. So third year, chill, you enjoy life. Final year, study, enjoy life. You might want to choose to do electives in the UK around the end of final year. So there's a gap between final year exam completion and internship start. That is when I did my electives, and you would need to apply for these electives at least 6 months in advance. Some places like Oxford, where I got into with scholarship, that you have to apply 1.5 year in advance, which is a bit of a ball ache because it's you don't realize that you need to apply so much in advance. Imperial College, another place where I did my elective in neurosurgery, was also something that was a bit more flexible, which is about 8 months in advance you need to apply. So you can go on to the websites of all of these colleges and just they have an elective program. So you can just check that. Oxford has a scholarship elective program. So the application is a little more bigger, but yeah, you can choose to do the electives if you want to see how the UK is, if that is really the right one for you, and if that's what you want to go on to do. So internship is when so for example, you've given your final year exams, you've got your results, you're done your electives, and then you get your results. That the day you get your results, you should ideally approximately around that time, you should book your PLAB 1 date and start with your internship. PLAB 1 can and should be given during internship because it's the earliest that you can give it technically, and it is also a great time because you need to prepare for 3 to 4 months tops and just finish that off because you will need some time and planning for PLAB 2. Once you're done with your internship, you can either fly to the UK quickly and give this exam if you've gotten a date, or you can continue to do your bond and give it in between that. So once you've done that, you've passed your PLAB 2 and you've done that, you get your James registration, you apply for an SHO or an FY2 post. SHO is basically senior house officer. FY2 is foundation year 2. Foundation year 2 is essentially second year of internship. These people have 2 years of internship rather than 1. So you would, which is what I'm doing. I'm doing FY2. So you need that because to apply to get into training, you need to have completed 24 months of post final year internship to be eligible to start training. So essentially, you can't just after internship apply for specialty training and get into training. You need to have 1 year. Why I got in was because I was in a approved F2 program, which essentially meant that I will be completing 24 months of postgraduate training before I start my specialty training. So that's why I got that exemption. You will not get that exemption with SHO post, so be aware of that. Then you would start off with ST1 or CT1, and then approximately 5 to 7 years later, 5 years if you're clinical radiology, 6 years if you're interventional radiology, 7 years if you're medicine or surgery minimum, and then you will become a consultant. That's where all the good part of life lies, apparently. So preparation. When do you start preparing for the exam? For UK now, but only on your portfolio. Don't try preparing for the exam, because the exam is really not that difficult. So what does your portfolio include? The portfolio includes 5 main sections. One is leadership activities. So join a club, join an organization, try to become the regional or national head. The highest level of points you get for a portfolio, or if you've been part of the national committee in some sort of leadership role. Second one is teaching others and teaching courses. So if you get an opportunity to teach juniors, if you get opportunities to do any sort of teaching, do that and get it documented by some professor that you've done this teaching, and it really shows, it really adds value to your portfolio. If you are able to do research and ideally get them published in a PubMed index journal. But honestly, again, this is something which most people do not have, and if you don't have it, don't stress over it. It's something which takes a lot of effort, and if you don't have the time or the money or the skill to do it, there's no point doing it, because it's not going to add that much value or difference to your portfolio. Audits and QIPs is something which is very specific to the UK. It's not done regularly in India, and that is why a lot of people from India don't have these on their portfolio. I particularly had to hunt down somebody who knew about this, a professor who knew about this, and then conduct an audit under them before I came here, so I had the documentation. But I'll give you resources at the end of the talk, which will be able to direct you to what an audit is, what a QIP is, and how you can conduct it. It's very simple. It can be done in 2 days as well, so it's really not a big deal. And the last one is commitment to specialty. So if you attend any conference, any sort of talk from the specialty that you want to get into, get a certificate for that. That really adds value. That shows that, hey, you've not just sort of woken up today and said, I'm not enjoying this, so I'm going to do this. So that all these things add up. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the talk. My timeline of where I am now was, I made the decision to come to the UK after my final year exams in January of 2020. I booked my exam in March of 2020, which was approximately when I started my internship. Lab 1 I gave mid-August 2020, so literally the gap between that is 5 months probably, but I didn't even prepare for that 5 months. May 2021 I gave my Lab 2, which was almost a year after that, but I went to the UK about a month before, and I prepared with some friends. One of them was my senior from KEM. And then I started my F2 post in August of 2021. So last year, August. I applied for residency in November 2021 and interviewed in January. And this March, I got acceptance into the training program, which for interventional radiology. Cost factor. So I guess people were wondering about this, and this is probably one of the big decision makers for a lot of people. I do understand that some people might come from privileged backgrounds like myself, where I didn't really have to think about this that much, but it does add up sometimes for a lot of people. So just to give you an idea, IELTS or OET is 15,000 or OET is 30,000. Lab 1 fees is 20,000 rupees. Lab 2 course costs about 50,000 rupees. The travel to and back from the UK is about 50,000, and living in the UK for about a month is 50,000 rupees. Now, Lab 2 fees are 85,000 rupees, which makes this a very, very expensive exam. So failing is definitely hurtful, because you need to book it again. And then finally, visa and travel one way when you're coming here, settling down for the first few days before you get any sort of pay from them is 50,000. I'd probably say 50,000 to 1 lakh, depending on how far away you are from the pay date. So total approximately the entire journey cost 3.2 lakhs. I would say put a leeway of 4 lakhs with inflation and all those other things coming into factor. Airline tickets are also getting more expensive. So I guess I'd say 4 lakhs at this point for you guys, might go up to 4.5 by the time you guys start with this whole process. So that should be the approximate figure which you should keep in mind. You also need to keep in mind that if you break your bond, it would be another 20 lakhs. So that is something which you need to keep in mind. That is a lot of money compared to this entire process. But that would be the case for any for USMLE or the UK. A lot of people ask me, why did I choose the UK over the US? So I have 5 principal points. There's quite a lot of other points as well, but the first one was money was not a priority at that point for me to think about. I'm like I said, I've been privileged enough to come from a background where I don't need to worry that much about the money. So I didn't kind of look into US and be like, hey, that's going to pay me the most. That's where I'm going to go. I wanted the path of least resistance overall. So even after you become an attending in the US, you don't have that much of a great work-life balance unless you are in lifestyle branches like pathology or radiology, stuff like that. I wanted to move to Australia or New Zealand or even India after training. And if you go back to India after the UK training, that holds significant value over your peers who might have done the same amount of training and same years of training as you. You will get a higher post than them at hospitals, private hospitals, particularly in India. So that is definitely a huge game changer. And enjoying my 20s was very crucial for me. If I'd done it in India, you guys know what the residents are like. They basically have no life for 3 years. And then you do it in the USA. It's also, again, very busy. And then it's also a lot of effort, which does curtail a lot of the enjoyment. Obviously, I don't know enough of that to comment. So I'm able to balance my life quite well here. So I wanted to get into interventional radiology, which for the US would have required me to have an additional year or 2 of research assistance, in a college or a research program to even apply. And even beyond that, the chances of getting it are significantly low. But we obviously we do have people who have gotten in, and they've been amazing people who have put in the effort, and they've put in the work to get in, and it is possible. I'm not saying it's not possible to get into IR in the US. I just didn't want to put in those many years again of my life into that. So just for contrast, I was able to get into IR within 6 months of being here with just a little bit of planning. So principles of the healthcare system, which is a socialized system here, it's aligned with mine compared to what in the US, where people literally die because they can't afford their treatment, like insulin, or insurance companies really screw them up. Life in the UK, it's pretty good. It's during residency is 40 to 48 hours per week, much less compared to the KEM standards or even US. Pay starts for approximately £40,000 a year, upwards of 70 towards the end of training, and that can boost by almost 50%. In addition to this, if you do overtime or out of hours or locums. It is mainly an apartment lifestyle for the first 3 years, I would say, till you save up and you buy a house for yourself in the place where you think you're going to end up for the majority of your training. In training posts like medicine and surgery, you do need to travel quite a bit to different rotations across a region. So that is something to keep in mind. Research opportunities are abundant, but really not a requirement for applying unless you're applying to the extremely high demand specialties like cardiology, neurosurgery, or other specialties. Obviously, hospitals cleaner, more hygienic, well-equipped, and colleagues are really, really nice. Just to put that into perspective, there's times I did an anesthesia rotation, and there's times when basically the consultant is standing up and I'm sitting on his chair, and he's like, "Oh yeah, don't get up." Like it's like it's the hierarchical thing really doesn't exist that much, probably in surgical specialties, but otherwise it's very flat hierarchy. And it's quite nice to not be belittled and shouted on all the time during your residency. As a doctor, the pay scale approximately when you become consultant starts with 81 base and obviously enhancement, so it goes up to about 100K. Radiology, anesthesia, GP gross pay does average around 150 to 200K if you combine private work as well, which there is a lot of for these people. Orthopedic surgeons as well would be around that mark. The ironic thing in the UK is that if you're a neurosurgeon and you're a pathologist, you will still make the same amount of money. Although a pathologist will probably make more because he's able to do a lot of private and other sort of out of hours reporting than neurosurgeon. So it's mainly like you're being paid for your time, not for your specialty. So that really helps people put things into perspective and not go behind branches which are paying more. Simple answer is that if you want to make something called as the andha money, andha paisa, go with USMLE. But if you want comfortable one, you're okay with this, and you want to enjoy your 20s, you enjoy your 30s, still have the opportunity to move to Australia, New Zealand, India, Middle East, wherever you want to go. This is definitely a good option. My experience here has been finding support system is very important because it's a new place, like any other things. Finding it, that is very important. There's enough extra work to go around for you to make a lot more than what your basic pay is, because if you can put in the extra effort, you paid at 5 to 6 times your normal hourly rate. So you end up making what you'd make in a month in 2 days, sometimes 3 days, sometimes. Internal medicine is a dumping ground for old patients, unfortunately, because people live here for much longer than compared to India. I would say, from what I've seen, if you're thinking of doing internal medicine, I would discourage you from taking internal medicine in the UK. It is a dumping ground. It is something which really isn't rewarding for most of the people I have met. So that is something to keep in mind if you're leaning towards medicine rather than surgery or other specialties. That's basically been my life for the last 8 months. It's snowed. I've traveled a lot. I cycle rurally to work sometimes. Play tennis on Sundays. I've bought my car within 5 months of coming here. Go rock climbing on the weekends. I've got really nice friends here. That's me and before surgery. This is the backyard of the place I go for work on Thursdays. We've got a private tennis court there, and we play during our lunch. I've got a cat. We sometimes go out for beer with my friend, even at 12 p.m. because we get done with work so early sometimes. And overall, I guess it's been quite nice. So I would say, yeah, definitely consider this if you've been thinking about it. These are the resources. If you can take a screenshot of this, these are basically the only 3 places which you need to understand everything that you need to know about the UK. So just take a screenshot of this and read the entirety of Road to UK. Literally read every article over there, and any other minutiae questions and stuff like that, you can always ask on this group. This is a really supportive group, and this is another resource which you can just go through, see if there's any additional value that they can provide. Right, okay, so we've come to the Q&A section. I'm done with my talk, done with my monologue. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer that. Let's see. Right, told him about the money, we've answered that.
Just has asked a question.
Sorry?
People have asked questions
Yeah,
in
I'm
the
just
chat.
read that, yeah. So what all scholarships can we apply for before getting electives is one of the questions. As far as I know, the only scholarship which exists in the UK for electives is the Oxford Scholarship. It's a global scholarship which is offered to 50 students across the world every year for coming in and doing their electives in the UK at Oxford. So that is the only scholarship which I know of. Imperial does charge money for staying there and some administrative fees, but it's again not that much. Cambridge is quite expensive to do your electives in. Other places in London like St. George and stuff, again, the value of that questionable, but if you want the experience of just understanding what life is like in the UK, then it's a good place to do that. Ankita has asked, after completion of residency in the UK, which all countries can you work in specialist, which all countries recognize and accept your residency training without you having to take another exam? Now, so this is quite an interesting question, and this is something which a lot of people talk about after they've come here. In general, the standard is that Australia, New Zealand, Middle East, all countries, India recognizes the CCT from here, um, and Canada. So these are the 5 places where you can go and work. Although to become a full-time consultant there, you would obviously have to pass their fellowship exams, which you could probably give with your normal fellowship exams and get done with it, if you're very clear about where you want to go. One thing I will note is that if you want to move to Australia or New Zealand, um, there are particular specialties which enjoy biases, or which enjoy more success in getting a good job in a good place compared to other specialties. So those specialties which are much easier to get really nice, high-paying, comfortable jobs are anesthesia, GP, radiology, and psychiatry. Psychiatry is a big one. If you're considering psychiatry, staying in the UK, you will get very highly paid jobs in all parts of the country, all parts of the world. Thank you for such an informative session. Thank you. I know this is about the UK, but would you also have information about residency in Australia? Residency in Australia is I have a colleague who is sort of planning for that, and my knowledge is quite limited. But essentially, what I know is that if you've done 1 year of work from the UK after your Indian degree, then you are eligible to go work in Australia and New Zealand as a junior doctor. Once you've gone there, although in Australia, to get into training, you will be at the back of the line because you are a Australian citizen from a non-Australian medical degree. So at the end of the day, you are at the back of the line for residency. So you might take a few years to get into the residency program. And it's quite competitive because it's a small country, very few training numbers, and a lot of applicants. So it's a bit unclear what is the ideal way. I would say if you really want to go there, then you could do that. You could come here for a year and then move there. But at the end of the day, it's your call. You could complete your training here and then move there as a consultant, which is much easier. Okay, so on what basis do you select, do they select you for the scholarship as you need to apply for final year or even before that? Right. So when I got selected for the Oxford scholarship, it was like, again, in UK, everything is based on those 5 topics: leadership activities, research, audit and QIPs, teaching programs, and other special achievements which you have outside of medicine. And you have an interview as well. After you've done that, they basically rank people, and then they say that you've been accepted or not. So yeah, everything in the UK is around those 5 points. I mentioned I was preparing for US Assembly in second year. What made you change your decision back then? Like I said, I was in a sort of an existential dilemma of what I want to do, and like I explained in those slides, my division between USA and UK was those topics. Money was really not an option. I didn't really believe in the healthcare system. Wanted to enjoy my 20s. Wanted to have freedom to move across, and still sort of not be groomed for it. So that's what ended up me making that decision. But I think there was also a bit of carelessness at that, because I just felt like, yeah, I can't be bothered with this. I can't study this much again and again. So I'm not going to do this. So I guess I'm just justifying my answer at this point. Right. Audits, just, audit is a big topic. I would say audit is a bit difficult for me to explain over the call. If you've taken a screenshot of the resource that's given, there's a really nice video and explanation of how audits work and what they are, and how you can go about doing them. And you should be able to do that. Racism still prevails. Well, I guess I would say that racism is more in India compared to anywhere, because we're quite racist on the basis of our caste and religions and stuff like that, compared to here, where it's really not that common. It's quite often people, unless you're sort of rude to them, or you're not really being part of the culture, that's when you sort of face this. Otherwise, they're very open, because Indians occupy all the high sort of administrative positions in the NHS, so they really can't. There's no racism there. How difficult is it to get into dermat residency? Dermat residency, again, very popular, very difficult to get into. But again, compared to India, it's nowhere close. You do 3 years of internal medicine and then you apply for dermat. Competition ratio is approximately 5 people for one post. And then if you've worked through your IMT to get a good portfolio, you will get it. It's really not that difficult. So how do you decide specialty and how do I get into radiology? So yeah, if you told me just do diagnostic radiology, I'd probably not do it. Interventional radiology has always been the thing for me because when I entered medicine, I wanted to be a surgeon. And when I sort of exposed myself to surgery, I realized that I don't really like surgery. So what do I do? But I really like to work with my hands, really like to solve things with my hands, and sort of have that balance between diagnostics and intervention where you're able to put your mind to work and then solve things rather than just cut things up. And interventional radiology is the perfect mix of that. It's the future of medicine. The developments in technology are just insane over there. The way that's growing, all the scope for the future, it's insane. So there's really no other specialty for me. I could never be happy in any other specialty. Research section. What do you do in research section to strengthen your portfolio? The way that works is that it's counted. So you don't get any points if you don't have research. If you've got one research in a PubMed Index journal, even if it's a case report or stuff like that, it's basic. Any publication in a PubMed Index journal, you get 1 point. If you get 2, then you've got 2 points. If you've got 3 co-authorships, then you get the maximum 3 points. So that's approximately how it works. Every specialty has a different requirement for it, but essentially try and get 2 to 3 case publications or whatever. It's very easy to do. If we aren't able to decide between US and UK, would you suggest giving MLE part 1 and third year, then revisit decision? Yeah. I mean, I would say if you're not sure and if you can put in the effort, if you've got the will to do it, give part 1, give step 1, and then revisit that decision, because obviously if you end up choosing USA, then you've at least made that step towards that, because like I said, PLAB, you can always make that decision later on. So probably if you want to do it, you can do it that way. New emerging fields in the UK which you think can flourish in the coming years. I'm biased. I'm biased towards interventional radiology. So if you ask me, I would say interventional radiology. It's really upcoming. Neurointerventional radiology. It's insane. I mean, the technological developments and the ability to do private work with the least amount of setup and the most amount of returns is very high over there. In that field, probably another place is orthopedic, ophthalmology and ENT. These probably I would say are the top 3 highly emerging fields in the UK. UK MLA different from PLAB? No, it's just a rebranding of the thing. It probably be slightly different. They haven't released the details of how it will be different, but it's mainly grossly going to be the same. It's like the next exam which even the UK graduates will have to give. So it'll be standardized across everybody who's applying for registration. How do you compare UK versus US versus India versus other countries in terms of quality of specialty training, like recent advances and stuff? Right. I would say that US definitely leads with the cutting edge stuff. So, but then again, so for example, if you have 50% of the hospitals in USA having the cutting edge stuff, you will have these cutting edge technologies in the major hospitals across the UK. So if you're training in one of the centers, if you're training in something high specialty like cardiology, stuff like that, you will be at a high center. You will be exposed to these recent advances and stuff. So that is definitely something you can keep in mind. Quality of specialty training, I think this is where a lot of people sort of confuse the fact that if you've got more number of cases that you see in India, then you're a better doctor, which I agree. You will have seen a lot of different things. You will have had more experience with dealing with complex patients, but the art of doing medicine or the art of surgery, it's more about quality versus quantity. So here you will not do 100 operations per month, but you will do 20, which you'll do perfectly. So then that the sort of balance between quality and quantity needs to be factored in. What if we don't go into super specialty after 3 years? Do we need to apply again? Yeah, so I mean, at the end of 3 years, if you don't get into super specialty, you would continue as a registrar, which gets paid really well. You can do a registrar locum job, and you can apply again next year and try your luck. So there's no your first attempt is your last attempt kind of thing. Every attempt is considered as a new attempt, and you can try as many times as you want. especially for surgical branches because of importance of skills. Yeah, okay. So that's just continuation of Paras Madre. Cool. What's your take on radiology being under threat from AI? Okay, so just we'll just quickly answer this, and then I guess we'll just close this. So AI, I think it's more people who are away from radiology who are more concerned about radiologists losing their jobs compared to radiologists fearing this, because essentially radiology, AI is quite far away from independent reporting. It is going to be a workflow helper. So essentially it'll be working in the background and be like, hey, this emergency scan might have this. Can you just have a look? And you look at that. Because putting things together, for example, you've got a CT, you've got an X-ray, and then you've got an abdominal CT, and you need to put together, hey, this might be a med which is going from here to here, which is the primary. That is something which is we're quite far away for that. And again, all the retraining parts and stuff like that, it's a huge debate. Gap year being red flags in the US, I don't know for the US, sorry, but in the UK, it really doesn't matter.
Exactly. I wanted to ask like whether they are in the UK. Like,
oh yeah, no. It doesn't. You don't get red flags for having gap years at all. What resources did you use for PLAB 1 and PLAB 2? PLAB 1, I used Past Medicine and Plabable, and for PLAB 2, I joined this academy called Aspire in Manchester and practiced with friends over there. Just do Plabable and Past Medicine. Past Medicine is the best resource out there, I would say. If you've done that, you're good. Cool. I think most of the people have left anyway. Thank you for attending.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's given you some sort of clarity with things.
I guess we are done with the questions. Like I was just waiting if there is any more question, but yeah, like people have started. Thank you. So even from my side, I'll just conclude this saying that thank you so much for giving your time, your efforts, for accepting the invitation in the first place, and then preparing so hard, putting in your efforts to make the presentation, preparing for it, doing your research and sharing your knowledge. For all of that, thank you from the bottom of my heart. From the audience part also, on the behalf of the audience, I thank you. And to our audience also, I thank you so much for joining in. Yeah, it would have not been possible because of attendance of you all. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I guess we can end the call. Yeah.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Yep.